Loyalty oath to the Israeli government, making it illegal to disparage or boycott them?
This is going on.
Did you know more than half the states in the U.S. have a loyalty oath to the Israeli government, making it illegal to disparage or boycott them? In the U.S., inside of our Constitution, we have the First Amendment, which protects our freedom of speech. That allows for freedom of the press. It allows to peacefully protest. And within reason, we're able to share our feelings about our elected officials all the way up to our own president. And yet we have laws in more than half the states in the U.S. that make it illegal to do that about the government of Israel? Own president, and yet we have laws in more than half the states in the U.S. that make it illegal to do that about the government of Israel? I want you.
No matter who you are, UCI Health is here for you.
Plenty of Texas residents still need relief after Hurricane Harvey, but for at least one Texas town, government support comes with a price, a pledge not to boycott Israel. The city of Dickinson, Texas started accepting applications for hurricane relief grants last week, but the application form included a clause which required candidates to not boycott Israel while receiving aid. The city's lawyer says it's just complying with the statewide law signed earlier this year, which forbids state agencies from forming contracts with any companies that boycott Israel. But the American Civil Liberties Union blasts the clause as a McCarthy-era violation of the First Amendment right to free speech. A 1982 Supreme Court case found political boycotts were protected under the First Amendment. The movement to boycott companies that do business with Israel has sparked legislative backlash elsewhere in the country. The ACLU filed similar challenges this year to a Kansas state law in a proposed bill in the U.S. House and Senate.
I think the American people generally understand that we have a flawed political system. Basically, we've got
party candidate that,
or at least that's what we're asking people to do. Traditionally, as you probably are aware, the participation rate for people in this country has been pretty low. In fact, abysmally low, and especially when compared with that of there is tremendous pressure inside the political process to make sure that the voters stay aligned inside either the Democrat or Republican parties. Why? Because both of those parties have been captured by special interests. And those special interests are, quite frankly, the antithesis of the interests of the people. And so therefore, for example, if people in the United States care about education, but unfortunately there's a banker that gets in between the student and the student's ability to go to school, if they care about health care, there's the insurance industry that gets in between the patient and the doctor who is seeking to provide care. And so we have all of these special interests that have positioned themselves in between the political decision makers and the people themselves. The process now is more responsive to those special interests than it is to the values and the wishes of the American people. When I first went to Congress, I did not go to Congress to pay particular attention to any area outside of the black community that I represented that was in need, and of course U.S. Africa policy, which was abhorrent and unfortunately still is. But what I ran into, I bumped into at almost every turn were these special interests. And there's no more special interest that has any more influence than the pro-Israel lobby. And so then when I did outreach, for example, to the Muslim community in the United States, I bumped into the pro-Israel lobby, which of course does not want to have to contend with a politicized Muslim community, which is as large as and is as wealthy as the pro-Israel lobby is in the United States. So yes, I first-handedly and also frontally was assaulted by the presence of the pro-Israel lobby to such an extent.
Physically assaulted?
Well, politically assaulted.
Okay.
To such an extent that my father had to ask the question publicly, what does Stone Mountain, Georgia have to do with Israel? What I was doing was servicing the needs of my constituents. And I was not allowed to do that because I did not toe the line on U.S. policy for Israel.
What line is that they wanted? Were you told directly that you had to toe a line, or explain that to me?
Well, every candidate for Congress at that time had a pledge. They were given a pledge to sign. And I was new on the scene. And so the pledge had Jerusalem as the capital city, the military superiority of Israel.
American Congress.
I was new on the scene. And so the pledge had Jerusalem as the capital city. I was new on the scene. And so the pledge had Jerusalem as the capital city, the military superiority of Israel.
American Congress people have to sign this pledge.
Yes, you sign the pledge. If you don't sign the pledge, you don't get money. So, for example, it was almost like water torture for me. My parents observed this. I would get a call, and the person on the other end of the phone would say, I want to do a fundraiser for you. And then we would get into the planning. I would get really excited because, of course, you have to have money in order to run a campaign. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the planning, they would say, did you sign the pledge? And then I would say, no, I didn't sign the pledge. And then my fundraiser would go kaput. I made it public. This probably nobody had said anything about it. But I made it public, and then, you know, the excuse was, well, you know, those were just overzealous advocates for Israel. So then the tactic changed. And but this is what is done for 535 members of the United States Congress. 100 senators, 435 members of the House of Representatives have to now write a paragraph, which basically says the same thing. So it's not a pledge, but it's a paragraph, and you post it, and, you know, there are these forums you have to go to at the synagogues or whatever, and then, so it's not a pledge, but it's a paragraph, and you post it, and, you know, there are these forums you have to go to at the synagogues or whatever, and then, you know, so it's not a pledge, but it's a paragraph, and you post it, and, you know, there are these forums you have to go to at the synagogues or whatever, and then, you know, if you don't perform appropriately, then you don't get money to run your campaign. The problem is that it requires an awful lot of money to run a campaign. And whether it's a woman's organization, an environmental organization, people can read about this on the internet if they're interested. If you go to thomas.loc.gov, that is the official United States Congress website. And if you put in the name Gus Savage, because Gus Savage was a black member of Congress who was targeted by the pro-Israel lobby. And he had the foresight to use his position as an incumbent in the House of Representatives to put his experience on the congressional record. For the entire existence of the United States Congress now, people will be able to access his experience. And what he wrote was that it was the Garden Club of New Jersey that gave his opponent $5,000. But it wasn't really the Garden Club of New Jersey. It was the activists who were associated with AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Well, the district that I initially represented in Congress, I represented so many districts because redistricting was a tool that was used to target me, to eliminate me from the Congress. But the district that initially sent me there was a district that was comprised of rural blacks in the black belt of Georgia. These are people who have not had access to equal opportunity at all. The district was challenged in the Supreme Court. And with the assistance of the Anti-Defamation League, the district was dismantled. It generally takes about $250,000 minimum to take a case from filing up to the Supreme Court. And the people who filed the lawsuit to dismantle they challenged my ability to represent the people of that particular district.
Who were these people?
Well, actually, interestingly, there were 5 white citizens, one of whom had been the white male candidate that I defeated in the Democratic primary. And they were aided and abetted by the Anti-Defamation League. And when the case arrived at the Supreme they were aided and abetted by the Anti-Defamation League. And when the case arrived at the Supreme Court, and they were aided and abetted by the Anti-Defamation League. And when the case arrived at the Supreme Court, interestingly, on the same day as an environmental case, the spotted owl case, the Supreme Court decided that the habitat for the spotted owl should be protected, but that the black voters in that district could have no protection. And so the district spotted owl should be protected, but that the black voters in that district could have no protection. And so the district was dismantled. Well, I have, because of the notoriety about me telling my story, and then, of course, the public positions that I've taken supporting the human rights aspirations, the legitimate rights and the aspirations of the Palestinian people, I have a target on my forehead. And that rights and the aspirations of the Palestinian people, I have a target on my forehead. And that then means that every means that is available to the pro-Israel lobby will be utilized to make sure that I do not ever occupy a position of authority. Now, will be utilized to make sure that I do not ever occupy a position of authority. That every means that is available to the pro-Israel lobby will be utilized to make sure that I do not ever occupy a position of authority. That every means that is available to the pro-Israel lobby will be utilized to make sure that I do not ever occupy a position of authority. Now, fortunately for me, there is a very large peace community that is interested in change. And they would like to have a tested, experienced voice representing them in that very hall of Congress so that they can at least have their voices heard, even if they can't change the policy. But being there is the first step to having the policy changed.